So today we have fellow gamers command Torrey Kelly with myself, talking about his trip in Japan as well as his experience at Worlds for Final Fantasy TCG this year. So welcome, Torrey. Welcome back to the States.
Yeah, it's good to be back home. Finally getting back over the jet lag. It was pretty rough with the 14-hour time difference.
14 hours, huh? How long was your flight? Was it 20 hours? Did you have any layovers?
So I flew out to Japan. I didn't do a direct flight to, obviously, I didn't do a direct flight to Japan. So I live in Baltimore, Maryland, and my brother lives in Seattle. So what I did was Wednesday after work, a week and a half before the event, I flew to my brother's place because the next day was Thanksgiving, right? So I flew to my brother's in Seattle. I had Thanksgiving with him and his wife's family. It was very nice. And then that following Saturday, we then flew to Japan. So it was like a 6-hour flight or so to Seattle, and then an additional 10 to 11 hours from Seattle to Tokyo. So overall, in the plane on the way there and on the way back was like around 17 hours, I would say. But obviously, it's more than just, getting, that's just airtime. That's not driving to the airport, waiting for the plane to fly off, and then getting from the airport to the hotel. So just the day of the actual second leg of traveling was around 17 hours from the moment we left my brother's house to the moment that we arrived at the hotel. It was grueling, and like by the end of it, like you don't know what day is, what night is, or any of that. So I'm glad that I had that whole week or so to like adjust to the time zone. But even still, it was pretty rough. The first few days, we were like falling asleep at like 2 a.m. and not 2 a.m. like 2 p.m. each afternoon, like when we got there, because like our bodies just did not know how to stay up past that point. We were drinking Red Bulls trying to stay up. It was it was pretty rough. It was fun, but like sleeping was a challenge.
Gotcha. So I think you told me before that this was the first time you traveled abroad. Is that right?
Yeah, I had to get my passport for this. So once I won the Chicago Materia Cup, I was like looking at like getting the buys and whatnot. I was like, wow, there's a pretty decent chance I make it to Worlds this year, so I better get my passport. And so yeah, I got it back like in July or something. So yeah, it was my first time out of the country. It was really exciting. I was glad I had my brother with me to help me out.
Well, speaking of your first time abroad, did you know only 50% of Americans have passports? So you're welcome to the 50%, I guess.
I was already in 150%. I guess I'm just now in a different one. I didn't know that. That's kind of crazy. We're pretty insular as a country, I guess.
All right. So how was your experience in Japan? You were there for 2 weeks, I believe?
It was like a week and a half. So it was like 9 days. But it was great. There was a bit of a culture shock. Just everything is just different.
In what way?
But Tokyo's very pretty, for one way. Let me think. Just everyone was really polite. The amount of just English that I just heard and saw around was kind of crazy. Like if I walk around like downtown Baltimore, right, everyone's gonna be speaking English pretty much like nonstop, and there's very little other languages being spoken. But like in Japan, I just heard so many different languages just everywhere. Whether it was English, French, obviously Japanese, but like Chinese. Yeah, there was just. Maybe just because where I was in Tokyo was a bit of a tourist area, but there was just so much everything. Like we went to restaurants that like only had an English menu. It was kind of crazy. Yeah, it was just strange, and like the fact that I was able to get around without knowing like basically any Japanese was kind of crazy.
How'd you guys get around? Did you take the public transportation?
Yeah, we took the train, the metro around. So. We went to like Shibuya. We were staying in Shibuya because that's where the event was. But we went to Akihabara. We went to the Imperial Palace, and then we spent most of our time just in the Shibuya area, going to like the shrines and whatnot. It was a lot of fun.
Great. What do you think about the food? I know people say that Japan has one of the best food game in the world. Do you agree?
Food game? It was quite good. So the interesting thing about food is like normally I keep vegetarian, but it's pretty hard to keep vegetarian when you can't read the menu. So I more or less just gave up on being vegetarian during the trip. Luckily for the actual days at the tournament, our regional district manager, I don't know what Sarah's job title is, but Sarah made sure that she was able to put aside vegetarian and vegan dishes aside for me. So thank you, Sarah. It was really nice getting some other stuff that, matches my normal palate. But yeah, no, the food was delicious. We found like this hole-in-the-wall soba place nearby where we were staying. Like the whole restaurant only had 8 seats total, which is like tiny. It was like one tiny little bar, and the soup was so good. It was delicious. So yeah, I mean, I often have like Asian-inspired food at my house, so it was nice getting something more a little authentic.
You know, speaking of like vegetarian options, in Asian countries, not really a thing. I feel like you're gonna encounter the same problem in like China,
Yeah.
and Taiwan, Thailand, all of those places. Most of these places are not really vegan friendly, so
I know.
you know, it's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is. But like even like we went to a ramen place, right? And obviously like you expect there's going to be like some kind. The broth is probably going to be meat based, but like I ordered a tofu ramen, and I'm like, because surely the tofu ramen is going to be vegetarian, and then I get into it and there's like meat in it. I'm like, why is there meat in my tofu ramen? But it was fine. It was still delicious. It was just I thought I was actually getting a vegetarian meal for once. But that's what happens when you can't read the menu.
You know, in Japan, a lot of their food, right? They have like outside advertisements of the actual food. You know what I mean? Like they have pictures or like a physical render of the actual plate of food. At least that's how I saw a lot of it when I was in Japan like 10 years ago. Do they still do that?
Yeah, most of the menus had a significant visual component to them, which was really useful when you can't read the rest of the text. Also, a lot of the places, even some of the tiniest restaurants, like that 8-person soba place, had an electronic, like, it's kind of like a drive-through menu at like a McDonald's or something, but you could like go up and you like press the buttons and like order your meal without having to actually speak to someone, which is really beneficial when you can't, speak to the person making the meal. The fact that they had like an electronic menu, you could click a button to make it into English. Most of it was in English. Sometimes even when you click the English, like only certain parts of the screen were translated. So like it would tell you like what the food you were ordering was, but maybe like the actual checkout options were still in Japanese, which was awkward. But no, it was very convenient, even not knowing the language.
And did you try the convenience store food? I know I'm personally a huge fan of it. It's like some of the best in the world in terms of how accessible it is and how cheap it is, as well as like good quality food.
Yeah, the convenience store food was really nice because, we were not getting up at the normal hours someone would wake up in Japan. So, like, especially because, I mean, someone can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Like, breakfast in Japan is not like breakfast in the United States. Like, brunch places don't even open until like 11 a.m. So when I'm waking up at 3 a.m. because of jet lag, and then not having breakfast until 11, that's a problem. I'm 8 hours into my day and I haven't had like a meal yet, which is like not a thing in the U.S., right? Like we eat breakfast as soon as we wake up and it's like large. So being able to like go to the convenience store, like because they're everywhere, and just like grab some onigiri or something, was really nice, and it was delicious. And the fact that they were open 24/7, just everywhere in Tokyo, was very, very helpful for our jet-lagged selves who were hungry at 4 a.m.
Great. I'm glad you had a great experience in Japan. All right, let's move on to our next topic. So let's talk about the event.
Oh dear.
So, let's start by, how did you prepare for the Worlds event? Speaking to, we only had like a few weeks before the set release between the start of the event, so what was your approach? What was your thinking, rationale? I guess we can also pull up your deck lists if you can share them for folks to see.
I can share those with you. I'll send you. Do you want me to send it to you now?
Yeah.
Word.
Okay, so how did you go about choosing your decks?
So we finally had the full set revealed. Like, what was it? It was the beginning of November, like November 7th or something. And remember, I left for Japan like the day before. Not left for Japan, but I left. Like I had to have everything packed up and ready to go. Like the day before Thanksgiving, which was like only like what 2.5 weeks later. So I did not have much time to like read all the new cards, figure out what was good, and then put together lists that I was happy with. And looking at the set, the main thing that jumped out at me of all the new cards was that Clive was broken. Clive is an insane card. So I knew I really wanted to play Clive. And my first home that I wanted to put Clive in, I built this deck the moment Clive was revealed, was Water Fire Monsters. I was convinced Water Fire Monsters was going to be the best deck in the game. I mean, it eventually did end up winning Worlds, so, maybe. And, spoilers for the people who haven't actually watched Worlds yet, but, I was convinced Water Fire Monsters was going to be broken. So I spent basically that whole 2.5 weeks trying my hardest to build a deck to pair with Waterfire monsters. And I could not find one that didn't require me to sacrifice cards from one of the two decks. And if you go and look at the list that was that Hara paired with Waterfire monsters at Worlds, he had to make a lot of sacrifices, right? He wasn't running Amat in his monsters deck, in his fired monsters deck. He wasn't running a bunch of stuff. Like, he had to make a lot of sacrifices because he's running 2 Water-Fire decks, so sacrifices had to be made. He didn't get to run Tidus in his Wars of Light deck. Unfortunate. I wasn't willing to make those sacrifices. Maybe I should have. So, at the end of 2 weeks, I decide, nope, I can't do it. I'm not happy with Ice Lightning. I'm not happy with Mono Earth. I'm not happy with a whole bunch of decks. I tested so many decks, and I wasn't happy with any of them. I tried this, all sorts of stuff. So I was like, okay, I guess we're not running Waterfire. I guess we'll go back to Water Earth. The deck is still really good, and I'm pretty sure I could, assuming I don't draw, like, horrifically, I think I can still go undefeated on the day with that. So I just need my other deck to go 2-2. And so I was trying out various fire decks, and I just ended up going, I can't build something better than Megissa. Megissa's still my best second deck, I think. So I just ended up basically rerunning the exact same 2 decks I ran at Nationals. I mean, if it worked once, surely it can work again. And I think, overall, I am happy with the decks. The decks, they didn't perform on the day, but I hit the matchups I expected to hit. And sometimes you just don't draw what you need to draw. It is what it is. But yeah, I ended up with Megissa and Water Earth monsters.
Well, I know during testing, you told me a little bit about your game plan, and you experimented with Mono Fire and Ifrit, the priming package. So why did you choose Megissa over that one? Do you feel like that deck could have had more potential, perhaps? I'm not sure how it played or how it done in testing. I didn't get too much involved with the testing because I was also busy with my trip, so maybe share a little bit about the thought process behind that.
Okay, so once I decided that I was going back to Water Earth, I tested a couple of different fire decks, like you said. So I tested Ice Fire, Mono Fire, Megissa again, and Mono Ice. And of those, I wasn't really happy with any of them other than Megissa. The Mono Fire was like a Tyvis Clive deck that was looking to just ramp resources and try to build backups to potentially go for a Montleonis play. And it basically just played like Megissa, but without the Megissa. And that was just like, the whole reason you play Megissa is Megissa, right? So it was just like, it did what Megissa did, just worse. Then the Fire Ice deck was actually really cool. But I just could not find a way to beat decks with heavy board players. So like, even with Amat, it wasn't enough for taking care of like Shantoto and Mono Earth. And you just got board wiped, and then you just got ruined. Whereas Megissa like digs through its deck quicker and like has the ability to rebuild with like no cards in hand, basically. So it just didn't work as well, in my opinion. And then for Mono Ice, that deck is just felt like an inconsistent pile. Like you really need to find Torgal as soon as possible because Clive is you need to get your Clive online. And it really felt like that deck had like 3 cards in the entire deck that were good. And like it felt like you were being pulled in a lot of directions. Because on one hand, you want to ramp backups to get your like Kate Sith online and to get your Kurosame online. But on the other hand, you're running Rufus, right? Like you're running Laswell probably, right? So like you're like this weird aggressive deck, but also you're like this control slow deck that wants to ramp backups. Like the deck felt like it was conflicting, and I wasn't really happy with it. Also, like you can draw Clive, but if you don't have Torgal, you might not have the CP to like prime into Ifrit. So if like Clive is your answer to aggro in your hand, and you don't have a way to prime him, it's like really awkward. Mm-hmm. So that's why I didn't go with Mono Ice. And I went back to Megissa because when it's a mono deck, so that makes it in theory more consistent, and it's really good at punishing a lot of the other aggro decks in the format, like Knights and Chaos, as well as usually being able to just beat decks like Wind up, usually.
Okay, well, I guess since you're pretty keen on your deck choices, let's talk about the results and how you determined which one to start with deck A and which one starts with deck B. Because the Worlds format is kind of different from all of the other formats we've had previously. I know in NA we had this alternating 2-deck format that was best of 3, but for Worlds it was 4 rounds of the same deck A and then 4 rounds with deck B, and then depending on how you do with deck A, your deck B might have to face better opponents or worse opponents, depending on how you do with deck A. So I guess let's talk about, you know, your thought process and which one you should have picked for A and B, because now that we know what you chose, what was the thought process behind it?
Well, I think I chose correctly. So I wanted to start with monsters, right? Because I wanted to get a good start to the day. And I know some people are like, well, you should play your better deck second, because the second half of the day is when you're playing against the better players. But I really wanted to get that, like, 4 wins with the monster deck, which meant I should play it first when, like, my rounds are theoretically easier. I mean, like, obviously, everyone at the World Championship is, like, at least I should hope that they're a good player if they made it to Worlds. Let's just put it that way. And I didn't expect there to be any, like, free rounds, right? Like, no offense to some people that I've played against in the past, but, like, not everyone is a top player, right? But in theory, everyone at Worlds should be competent. And I wanted to just start the day off strong with the monster deck. And I wanted to feel good, because sometimes when I start losing games, I have an issue where I do worse over the course of the day, right? Like, if I lose round 1, like, the chance of me just having a nosedive because, like, my mental goes down is a problem. So if I started strong with the monsters deck, it should hopefully help me later on, where I don't need to do as well later in the day. So I started with the monster deck. And also, that deck is, like, pretty matchup neutral. Like, I don't think that deck really has any, like, hard losing matchups. And then the second half of the day, I wanted to play the Megissa deck, because in the second half, I thought that's when a lot of people would bring out either their, like, slow combo decks, like Mono Wind, or would just bring out the hard aggro decks to counter the slow combo decks. I thought a lot of people would start with their, like, matchup neutral deck, and then play their more fishy deck in the second half, matchup fishing deck in the second half. And Megissa is pretty good against most matchup fishing decks. That's part of the reason why I like it, right? It's good into the Chaoses and the Mono Winds and the Knights. And that's how it turned out. In the first half of the day, I played monsters, and I got a bunch. That's when I played against the 4-color Warriors of Lights. And in the second half of the day, that's when I played against the Chaoses, the Knights, and the Mono Winds. So it worked out the way I expected.
That's good, because if that was the thought process, I agree with you in terms of Megissa being favored against those aggro decks as well as those really slow pieces. Now, I know that based off what you told me, you went 3-1 in the first half of your day, and then you went, was it 1-3 with Megissa?
Went 1-3 with Megissa. It was extremely unfortunate, yeah.
Well, let's talk about, I guess, what your matchups were for each one, if you do remember. I guess first half with monsters, what did you play against? Did you win, lose? Maybe if you can remember that.
So the first half of the day, I played monsters, right? And my matchups were Knights, Chaos, and 2 different Wolf Wars. I beat the Knights, I beat the Chaos, I beat one of the Wolf Wars, and I lost one of the Wolf Wars, going 3-1. Both of the times I played against Wolf War, I looked at my opening hand, saw 0 backups, mulliganed to a new hand, saw 0 backups, drew for turn, still had 0 backups. The game that I lost, I played Blue Worm Opkalu turn 1, drew 2 more cards, still no backups, passed my opponent, came back to me, drew 2 more cards, still no backups. So I was never going to win that game, no matter what happened. The other game against Wolf War, I also drew 0 backups into 0 backups, but that time I said, screw it, played a Luna Freya turn 1, and I hit Hilda, which then, drew me another card. And then I think I just played the Hilda. No, I think I just passed there, and then the next turn I drew Lobberit or something. So both of the times I was really unfortunate, but that deck is I feel like it's so favoring to Wolf War that it doesn't really matter if you get to a slow start, as long as it's not like the abysmal start that the first game was. You make it there. So outside of just absolutely breaking out backups, that deck I feel like just really well into the current format. There's a reason why I brought it twice at Nats in here. So like the fact that I drew 0 backups for 2 games in out of 4 was absolutely absurd. It's a sub 2% chance of that happening, just a single time, let alone twice. So I was kind of tilted going into the second half of the day, because I was like, the fact that I'm 3-1 right now is a miracle based on what happened in these first 4 rounds. Like you shouldn't go 3-1 when you have 2 different games where you completely break on backups. But we got there into the second half. And then in the second half, we brought out the Megissa. Our first match was against Chaos. Lost the die roll. They went first. Turn 1, play Chaos. They had 1 special in hand. They used the 1 special, hit Raijin Fujin, and the discard 2. And I kept a hand that was like slow for Megissa, because like I didn't know what I was playing against. Or if I knew what I was playing against, I would have not kept it, because I had Neef and a multi-element in hand, which is usually enough against most, because most of the Chaos players choose to go second, right? So I wasn't expecting them to go first,
Well,
hit everything.
if they're bad, they choose to
I
go
know,
second.
I know, but most of them choose to go second. I personally think they should choose to go first.
Yeah.
I've looked at the data; they should go first. But regardless, most of them choose to go second. So he chose to go first, and he hit what he needed to hit, and it was really unfortunate. And I still almost got back in there. I had to like pitch my whole hand for Eodolus to like bring out an Axstar turn 1, which is not what you really want to be doing when you have to pitch 2 cards to the Chaos before your first turn. So, and then the only thing that I could summon out of my hand for the Axstar was a Y'shtola, which then hit me, so then I went down to damage 4, like, on my first turn, which is not where you want to be, right? So, it was pretty...
Well, hold on, you don't have to hit yourself.
I needed to, because I need to kill his guys.
Could you? Because it's only 4... Oh, yeah, well, combined with Axstar, okay, yeah.
Yeah, combined with Axstar to let me kill the Chaos. Because I didn't want him to continue, like, specialing me over and over again. So... It is what it is. So I lost that game. Like, but the thing is, if I knew if I was playing against Chaos, right, I would have mulliganed, right? Like, that hand was not worth keeping against Chaos. Against any other deck, it's worth keeping, but against specifically Chaos, it's not. And then the next round, I played against Monowind. I beat his face in.
As you should.
As you should to Monowind. Like, it was like turn 4 and I had 7 forwards on board, right? Or turn 3 and I had 7 forwards on board, including a Yuzuki. And it's pretty hard for them to board wipe you when you have the Yuzuki and Amat. That's just how it be. My next round was the one I played on stream, and I had to win my last 2 rounds at this point to make it into Top Cut. And I played against Knights. And again, didn't know what I was playing against, but I looked at my hand, and it had Megissa and Clive. And, like, I had done a lot of testing with the deck, with the current format. And I knew that if you, like, played Megissa Clive turn 1, swung with Clive, draw 2 cards, like, I only had 1 activator in my hand, and it was a 1 CP Ifrit, which is, like, probably the worst activator. Maybe Bomb is worse for turn 1. So I knew that my deck was chock full of strong Megissa activators.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, okay, we'll do this. I think for turn 1, I drew the 7 cost Ifrit for turn, which was, like, really unfortunate, because also, like, part of the appeal of doing this is that you have the ability to prime Clive on the following turns. And so once I had that Ifrit in hand, Clive was only just a draw spell at that point. But either way, I was like, this is fine. I'll play Megissa, I'll play Clive, attack with Clive, draw 2 cards. And the 2 cards I drew were both unplayable. Both unplayable garbage that could not ping my Megissa. And I was like, well, that's unfortunate. There's a lot of hits in my deck. But surely, next turn, I draw 2 more cards. There's a very high chance I hit a Megissa activator, right? We're only 1 Megissa activator down. There's like 15 in the deck. Surely, somewhere in my next 4 cards, there's a Megissa activator. So, my opponent is playing Knights. He's able to completely go off turn 1, dump his whole hand, go Ramza, Karilla, Gawain, and Garland all on the board. And I'm like, well, that's unfortunate. He's able to use Ramza to kill my Clive. But for turn, I look at the 2 cards at top deck, and there's still no Megissa activator, but there's an Eodolus. I'm like, okay, I guess we're just gonna dump everything, play Eodolus, get the Clive back, attack with Clive, draw 2 more cards. And I do that, draw 2 more cards, still no Megissa activators. I'm like, are you kidding me? Also, at this point, normally, you would just prime Clive into Ifrit, kill the Ramza, and there's nothing like the Knights players can do. It's game over. But the Ifrit was in the freaking break zone. So I was like, why is everything going wrong? How have I found no activators? But I'm like, I'm looking at my opponent's hand and board, and he has 1 card in hand because the last thing he did on the previous turn was like summon Garland, right? And he added back a Beatrix. So I'm like, okay, I have my Eodolus on board, right? So he can only choose to break one of these 2, and he doesn't know that the only Ifrit that I run is in the break zone. So he's going to have to continue focusing Ramza to kill Clive, right? Because he can't afford to let Clive prime. So I'm like, it's fine. Megissa's going to live a turn, and next turn I can just use Eodolus, crack Eodolus, hit Megissa, and we can at least get an Axstar out of the deck. So I pass over to my opponent, and he top decks Charlotte plus an ice card. And I never resolve a Megissa effect that entire game. Because the next turn he just slams Charlotte down. Because I knew his entire hand, it was just the Beatrix. So the fact that oh my god, I'm so tilted. And then the next turn I finally top deck a Megissa activator too. So like I had the Eodolus to ping Megissa, and I draw a Monk to ping the Megissa, and I can't use either because there's a goddamn Charlotte on board, who the turn before I put him to damage 3 as well. And then the first 2 damages off the Ramses are both Axstars, so I'm just like, at this point I'm just so tilted. And I can't get back in the game from there. Everything just went wrong. It was so sad. And normally that matchup's so free. Like, I was telling Hunter about it later, and he's like, you lost to Knights? How? I was like, I know! I know!
Maybe Clive ain't it, you know?
Clive is definitely it. If I could go back and change anything, I would have probably tried to fit a second copy of the Ifrit in the deck, as hard as it is. And I probably would have tried to, I also shouldn't have cut, Jekt. Jekt still should have been in the deck. So I don't know where I'd make the 2 cuts. Probably 1 copy of Minwu FFBE gets cut, and maybe, like, a backup or something. Like, maybe the Moody that I was running in the deck. Cut the Moody for, like, an Ifrit or something. I'm not sure. Yes, I'd probably make a couple changes. You really... Drawing that Ifrit screwed me so hard. But,
You know, that's one thing I really dislike about priming. It's because when you prime, the card has to be in the deck, otherwise you can't use it. I feel like design-wise, I know it's more worthwhile to play something from the deck, but if they had like a text that said prime could be from your hand or your deck, priming would be so much better, because like from the appeal of priming, I really feel like it's kind of weak right now because you need to commit so many cards to just make it work, like 6 cards to get Clive and Ifrit in the forward spot. Whereas if you you had the ability to prime from hand, you know, at least it'll just make it less bad when you draw it. At least that's my opinion.
yeah, so... I think the nice thing about at least Ifrit, and part of the reason why Clive Ifrit is so good, is that you don't necessarily mind drawing them as much because they're just incredibly powerful special fodder. But for the other ones that don't have crazy specials, it's like a lot more awkward. Like, there's nothing worse in Mono Ice than drawing your Shivas. Like, you don't want to, like, you don't mind casting Shiva. Like, she's still fine for 7, but like paying 4 for her from Jill while also getting an additional double freeze that lets you potentially break an additional character is like so much better. It's like night and day the difference in power level between like priming Jill and Shiva and just hard casting Shiva. So then you just end up with these like awful bricks that you don't want to cast. I feel like if we had a water primal, it wouldn't be nearly as bad because they make cards like Loporrit to put them back in. And part of the reason why I am so high on Water Fire is the ability to run cards like Loporrit, like put your icons back in the deck, or yeah, icons. But yeah, I think. Like, I come from Yu-Gi-Oh!, right? Where we have tons of cards that, like, only use things in the deck. Like, we have terms, like, Garnet and whatnot, for cards that can only be useful while they're in your deck. So, like, having to, like, not draw specific cards for your combo to go off is, like, par for the course for me at this point. So, it doesn't hurt nearly as much. Like, I run Realm decks, right? I'm used to, like, drawing the Atomos and having Realm become dead. It's, like, it is what it is. Sometimes you draw the brick. But, I don't know. I still think most of the Icon Dominant pairs are actually quite good. I just think that Clive was just the most obviously good one, and that's why he saw so much play at... I still think he's the best one. I think he's the best one, and it's not a surprise that he saw the most play out of all of them. But I could see cards like Sidolphus and maybe Benedicta, I'm not sure, seeing play later on. I do think the danger of drawing the bricks is much more prominent, however, with the light and dark ones. I'm not a fan of Dion, for instance. I think he's so awkward, because, like, you wanted to, like, in theory, you wanted to stick around the board drawing cards each turn before you then prime into him. Like, you want to, like, play Dion first, and then, like, prime into, like, Benedicta, activate all your backups, draw a card, and then, like, play, like, I don't know, like, a Clive, and then prime into Ifrit, and then, like, draw 2 more cards, right? Or whatever, something like that. But the problem is, for each one of these cards you draw off Dion, you're likely to then draw into your Bahamut's, which then turn off his ability to prime, and then, like, it's... I'm not a fan of the running 6 light cards in my deck.
Yeah, I think it's quite obvious that most of the prime cards besides 5 aren't that great. I know Jill saw some
Jill's really good. Jill's
play,
really good.
yeah. But she also is susceptible to like Ahmad or something, so it kind of turns her off from being able to prime if she triggers her auto before being able to prime, so that's also a problem. But speaking of prime, I know when I saw the set reveal initially, I thought a lot of these cards don't really improve existing decks all that much, so my predictions were that the meta would not have too many new decks come out, and that was relatively true for the most part. I know that most decks that were brought to the event that did well were existing archetypes that were recycled or improved upon. How did you feel about the meta in terms of Worlds? I know like last year at the same time, when a new set came out, World 7 became a new deck archetype that saw play as a completely never seen before deck. But this time around, like most of the decks were established from the previous set, and we didn't really see any new new decks come out. Like, did you feel the meta was getting a little bit stale and the new set just didn't perform as well as, you know, we had anticipated to be able to shake up the meta?
A bit. Yeah, it felt like most of the cards that came out that were powerful were only good in like pre-existing decks. Like there was no cards I felt outside of like maybe Clive just helping push like various decks that can run him. There's no cards I felt like really made new decks appear. The only exception maybe would be like Baby Warriors of the Crystal. It didn't really show up at Worlds, but I don't know if that's necessarily because the deck is bad or less than the fact that the deck is just, I think, difficult to build, right? There's very little direction that's obvious about like, oh, this is the elements that we should be running and all that stuff. Other than maybe that there's probably water should be a key component of the deck. And the problem is telling people, by the way, there's this new deck, we don't know how good it is. Also, it needs to use your water slots is like a pretty big ask when water is already the best element in the game and the most, what's the term? It's the most valued element, right? Like, especially in 2-deck, like, you if your deck is using your water cards, it needs to, like, be broken beyond all belief. And Lucio just being, like, strong to good is not necessarily compelling, especially when you're gambling, like, the culmination of your year's work into it. So, yeah, I think it was a little disappointing that there wasn't more new decks. Like, there was nothing like Knights or, like, just a few sets ago when we got Knights. Like, that changed the format, like, dramatically, right? Or when 13 came out, that changed the format. That was a new deck. Or, like, when Emmett Selch came out, like, boosting Mono Earth to, like, the top of the meta. Nothing like that. The closest we got was probably Clive helping out Mono Ice. Clive and Jill helping out Mono Ice. But then, I don't even know how I feel about that deck, so... yeah, I wish there was more. I do think the new Tidus is really good and is probably underexplored in Mono Water in particular. The moment I saw him, I started working on a Mono Water shell with him in it, and I think he's really powerful. But I love me bounce draw.
Oh, that Titus. I thought you were talking about the legend one with the warp mechanic, which made no
sense. No. He's bad. He's not good. I'm talking about the like the baby version of our DFF one that we got earlier in the year. The one that he's like...
I see. Yeah, I think I saw somebody play that on stream. They were drawing...
It won. It was in the Water Fire deck that won. Yeah, they were pairing with Sahagan and whatnot. But yeah, I think he's definitely has a home in Mono Water Monsters moving forward. Just his synergy with Realm is just so good. And like the whole reason we ran Wind Water earlier in the year when I was playing that deck was entirely for Tidus. Like we were running a whole secondary element, just like a terrible secondary element. You do not want to be in Wind usually, unless you're going like Mono Wind. So like we were running a terrible secondary element that reduced our deck's consistency dramatically, entirely just to gain access to that Tidus. And then in the latest set, they were like, oh, what if he's better and naturally in water, so you don't draw all the garbage wind cards? And it's just like, wow, this is pretty good. So yeah, I could see Mono Water incorporating him moving forward. So that's something. But then again, Mono Water is already a deck, so like it's not something like new. It's just like a new flavor of what we already had.
All right. So let's talk about the event prizing. I know everybody who went received some swag. Maybe you can show us some of the stuff that you got.
My jersey. So everyone that got there got we got a jacket. I don't know if you can read it. It says Team North America on there. We all got
jersey
mats.
or
it's
jacket?
like a sports jacket. I don't know if you can really tell. You can't really see on there. There's photos online. People will be able to see them. Yeah, so it's like it's a jacket, not a jersey. Everyone else who got the Aerith mat, very pretty. And then we got sleeves. Where are my sleeves? Where are my sleeves? It's fine. We got the Warrior of Light sleeves, and we got 2 more copies of the wall promo. So where is he? Where am I? I should have gotten this out earlier.
Question, right? I know in prior years the mat as well as the jackets came with like your name. I know that Hunter was showing off his what's it called? His playmat with his name on it for last year's Worlds. Is that also a thing this year or no?
No. So yeah, both the jacket and the playmats don't have your name on it, which I know a lot of the players were a bit disappointed. I'm not like a big fan of Aerith, right? I really like the Terra mat that we got from the Materia Cups this year. So I'm probably just gonna stick with if the new mat had my name on it, I probably would just play that every event going forward.
Yeah.
But I think I just like the Terra mat better. Also, for some reason, they didn't stitch the edges like the Terra mat stitched. So it's just like a rubber mat.
Oh.
So it's like not as like sturdy either. So I'm probably just gonna put that somewhere nice in my house. Just keep it there. But yeah, it was a little disappointing that the mats didn't have our names on it this year. Weren't what's the term? That there was no like decal or anything.
Yeah, it's a little bit disappointing, but I think, I mean, because of the increase in player size, it was like 52 up from, I don't know,
Yeah,
I don't remember how many it was last time, but I guess they
Yeah, I
just
think
didn't
that's
have
why.
time.
Yeah, I think they were already spending so much money. Like everything was just so much bigger than it was last year that they probably needed to cut costs, and that's one of the ways that they did it. I mean, I would have preferred maybe having a slightly smaller event if we were able to get like the decaled jerseys and whatnot. But like obviously I'm privileged. I would have gone regardless of how small the event was. So like obviously I would say that. But next year, like if I'm 12th place, I'm sure I'll be like, wow, I'm really glad that more people could go instead of having the stuff specialized. So it is what it is. I don't like that it encourages people to sell the mats as well. I think that like for me at least, like the world's pricing should like be beyond that. I don't tell any of my pricing. Like I don't judge people who sell their pricing. But I don't like to sell my pricing. It's like not worth the hassle to me. And like the pricing is like part of like my trophy, right? So like I wouldn't sell my trophy, right? So why would I sell the mat? I don't know. It seems weird. But I don't know. I feel like it would disincentivize selling the mats as well if they had like your name on it.
Exactly. By the way, the Warrior of Lights that you received, right? What's the difference between that one and the one that you received in Nats? Or is there any difference, or is it
So
different?
we got two of them. I don't know if you could see when I showed it off, but so one of them is the exact same as the one that we got at Nats, and then the other one has gold lettering. So it's kind of like the normal promos we get for competitive play.
Oh, so the one that you received at Worlds is non-gold?
So the one I received at Nats didn't have gold lettering.
Oh.
The one I received at Worlds, one of the ones I received at Worlds did. Now, sadly, because I only got 20th, I didn't get any of the top 16 or top 8 pricing. So I only got the entry stuff.
I see.
Yeah. I mean, I can show off the Warriors of Light again. Where are they? So.
And they also give you, for coming in first place for U.S. Nationals, or our Nationals,
Yeah.
some foil playset, right?
Yeah, so I got a foil playset of the current set, and I got a non-foil playset of the current set. I actually ended up using a bunch of those foil cards in like my Megasa deck, for instance, because like I wanted to run the signature Clive because he's pretty. So I took that out of my playset box. But that's not World's pricing. That's just Nat's pricing that was delayed.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you can tell from the Warriors of Light. One of them has gold text. One of them is silver text on the name.
So the silver one was what you received the Nats, right?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, the silver one is going to end up in your collection eventually. Next time I see you.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, that's no problem. Thanks for helping me out.
Yeah, no worries.
Let me put him back in the binder though before he gets damaged.
So, how was interacting with other players from other regions? I guess I know one of the things that you really wanted to get accomplished this year was getting your name out there. You know, bringing Torrey Kelly and Monsters to the world to see. And I know, like, we joked about this before, but you were always kind of sad that people didn't play your decks, and even when you won Materia Cup in Chicago, people were barely playing that archetype. But, you know, like, meeting people globally at the event, did they, you know, give you props for inventing and taking monsters to all these events, you know, get hyped up, or, you know, what was the feedback?
It was amazing, actually. So, like, it felt like everyone knew who I was. I was like, this is so weird. So, like, even, a few days before the event, we went to a card shop nearby called, I think, Grand Panda Canyon. And, we were talking with the owner there. And, he asked me what my name was, and he asked me if I was going to the Final Fantasy tournament that was, you know, in a couple days. And I told him my name, and he pointed at me and said, Monsters? It was really cool. I believe it was, I'm sorry if I'm wrong, I believe his name was Hiri. And I believe, because he was another player at the event. He was playing at Worlds. Okay. So it was really cool. I had people ask me to autograph their realms. I had people ask me to autograph blue worms. It was funny. Like everyone knew who I was. Like almost right when I got there, I saw Sasha Stark, And Sasha is like the one player I know of who was like actually taking Water Fire Warrior monsters to events in Europe after I
Yeah, I
won
saw
Chicago.
that. He was like the only one.
Yeah, Sasha was the only one, and like Sasha introduced himself, and like I didn't remember his name at first. Like it rung a bell. Like I hadn't like seen like him like play the deck at like any events in like months, right? So like he told me that he was the one who was playing the deck at events. I was like, oh my god, yes, Sasha, thank you. I was like, oh my god, thank you so much for playing my deck, because like it made me feel like warm inside seeing like someone like taking it to events and like doing well on it. And Sasha ended up making top 8 at Worlds, so that was awesome. I was like cheering him on. But no, I felt like almost like a celebrity, and everyone was just like, yeah, we tried your deck, we don't know how you went with it, but it looks good. It was basically what I was being told, but then people were telling me like, yeah, your deck's good, but like, I don't think it does well into Warriors of Light. And I was like, I don't know what maybe you have a problem with Warriors of Light. I don't know if me, I wouldn't say the deck has a problem with Warriors of Light. That sounds like a you issue.
I think that's an everyone issue, because I have the same problem. I get my ass whooped.
I don't know how y'all have an issue. That deck is free, if you draw backups. But I don't know. It was really cool, meeting everyone. Like, 'cause there's so also like you see like these tournament reports from like Japan and Europe or whatnot, and like often like just like with North America, it's the same people topping events over and over and over again. But like I can't put names to faces. There were so many people who I've talked to over the internet before that I finally got to like meet in person for the first time and finally put like a face to the name and whatnot. And it was really cool meeting everyone. Everyone was so nice, and just I don't know. It was a blast meeting everyone. So even though the tournament didn't go as well as I would have liked, it was still great meeting everyone, playing games, jamming cards, like talking about this game that we all love. Like obviously, like people are flying halfway around the world, to meet up and see each other. It was awesome. It was amazing, and I really hope I have the opportunity to go back next year and play with everyone.
Yeah, I guess speaking to that, what are your goals for next year? I know this year you accomplished so much. Let's list all the things. I know you had like 3 trophies or something, right? One from Winter Cup, one from Chicago, one from Nats, and then what was the 4th one?
Puerto Rico. I won the Puerto Rican LQ.
Right, but those don't count. Okay.
Whoa. It was so sad. I had one of every trophy except for Worlds. Like I won Winter Cup, like that's material. So I had done everything. I was like, there's only one trophy left. Like if I just get that one last trophy, it would be a perfect season. And I couldn't pull through at Worlds, but I can't really complain. So, I mean, the only way to go up from here is Worlds, right? So like, I don't know. Like it's obviously, even if you play perfectly, like we all can't win Worlds, right? So like even with Nationals, right? Like I could play perfectly next year and then not win Nationals. So like expecting to do as well as I did this year next year is it's not feasible, right? Like I had like pretty much a perfect season up until Worlds, so I can't really ask for more. The only thing I can hope to do is just to continue playing, continue having fun, seeing people at tournaments, and just hopefully I win a couple events next year. Like I'm not gonna go out there and say, yeah, I'm gonna be our national champion next year. That's like you can't win any event without some amount of luck, right? And I knew going into Nationals that I was gonna need to be lucky to win that event, right? Like skill alone isn't going to win you a trading card event. So I've been saying that all year. I said it after Winter Cup. I said it after Chicago. I said it after Nats, and I'm going to say it after Worlds too. Like you can't win these events without some amount of luck. Like that's just how card games are. But I just hope that I'm able to perform hopefully similarly next year. Luckily, I think this game does have usually a decent chunk of like variance. There is some amount of variance in the game, obviously, but there's a reason why a lot of the time you see the same people topping over and over again, and that I do think that this game usually rewards skill, and I hope that I can continue to be rewarded going forward.
Yeah, I think that's a good mindset to have, because you can't really tie your performance with sometimes the luck factor really like beats out on the skill, especially like what happened to you with the Magissa thing where you didn't draw the cards you need after like 5 turns, and that happens. You can't really blame, but with proper testing, that that's a low probability, and you just put yourself into the position where you're most likely to succeed. And luck really sometimes has a weird way of stopping you from doing what you want. But it happens, right? Yeah,
it happens, right?
Exactly. Sometimes it'll help you, sometimes it won't. But overall, I think you should be really proud of what you accomplished this year, and it's a feat that like I think most, if not all, people are pretty jealous to be you know, in what you have accomplished, because most of us aren't able to win like multiple trophies and accomplish all you've done. So I think you should really be proud of yourself, and yeah, it's a great season for you. And hopefully next year I'll join you with making it very far. So
yeah, we'll get you there.
Okay. Another question I had was, so when you were playing at with the people who were from the other regions, right? Some of them don't really speak English as their primary language. Did they have English cards, or, you know, was there any instances of like having difficulty navigating reading the cards if you didn't recognize some of the cards and what they did, or needed rule clarifications? How did that go?
So, funnily enough, I don't know if you knew this, but everyone actually had to submit their deck lists in English, regardless of what region you came from. Like the Chinese players had to submit English deck lists, for instance. But most of my rounds I played against people that spoke English. I think there was only 2 rounds where I played against someone who didn't speak English. But even then, like, I think it helps that there was not that much change in the meta, because like every single card I saw, I knew what it did, and the only time I ever had to ask, "Hey, can I read your card real quick?" It was against, I believe it was Jeremy, the guy who won European Continentals, and he was playing Chaos, and he was running the new Lightning in his deck. And I was like, "Hey, can I read your card real quick?" And it was a French copy of the new Lightning. And the thing is though, I took 5 years of French back in high school, so I like it's not great. But he's like, "Oh no, oh no, this is not in French." I'm like, "Bro, I took AP French. I should be able to at least read this." Like, I just wanted to confirm that it targeted, or I believe, because the thing I was trying to do was, so he blocked my monster, like my blue worm or something, with it, or no, I blocked his lightning with my blue worm, which triggered the bounce back to hand effect.
Yeah.
But I didn't want it to leave the field though, because if it bounced back to hand, he'd then be able to like bring out a lightning out of the break zone. So like in response to him, the trigger, I could then sacrifice blue worm to Witch of the Fens, right? Which then makes it so the target's no longer valid, so it doesn't bounce. Yeah. So like anyway, so that's what I was like trying to read it for, and yeah. But like I already knew what it did. I don't know why I asked, "Can I read it?" I just wanted to like look at it, I guess.
Right. So did everyone have their own language cards, I guess? Was that how it was done?
So yeah, everyone had. I mean, yeah, you had to bring your own cards, but if you needed a translation, you could just call for a judge, like raise your hand and say "judge." They would come over and like show you the card. When I played on stream, my opponent forgot that Yuzuki takes reduced damage, right? Because she's a water forward, so like he thought that him blocking Yuzuki with Surges would kill the Yuzuki. And I was like, no, she doesn't die. And like, so I handed him the Yuzuki to read, and it was like in English. And I was like, oh no. And then he was like, oh no. I'm like, luckily, I guess he knew enough English to understand what the Yuzuki said. But I was like, wait a second, I actually have a Japanese Yuzuki because I bought one while I was in Japan, and it was in my break zone. So I like reached into my break zone and handed him the Japanese copy of Yuzuki. And he's like, no, it's good. But yeah, no, there wasn't really any issues. As far as I know, there was no like language issues. Also, like, so like even the people that didn't really speak English, right? Like you just like point at the card and say like effect. It's not like Yu-Gi-Oh, where all of our cards have like 7 effects and you need to declare like which one it is. It's like the cards are pretty simple. Like when I play Realm and I say effect, no one needs a translation of what Realm does, right? I think we all know at this point what Realm does. This isn't my first tournament anymore where I had to explain to everyone what the card does. Like people are well aware. Yeah, I think that's how it went for like most of the people over the course of the day, is that like just looking at the images of the cards, like the picture, like everyone knows what Typhus is, everyone knows what Yuzuki is, everyone knows what Magissa is, everyone knows what Emmet is, like everyone knows what Luso does at this point. Like there's no surprises about that stuff. Especially when like these are world's tier players, right? We know what the cards do.
That's true, yeah. I was just curious on how you would interact with like some of the Chinese participants, maybe if they spoke English or not, or you know, Japanese players, because I would imagine it would be a little bit difficult because of the language barrier, but maybe that's not really a thing. So
yeah, luckily most of the players spoke English, but even when they didn't speak English, like as I said, like most of the cards are pretty simple. Like you just like if I point at Witch of the Fens, right, and then point at your monster, or like point at your guy, like you know what's happening there, right? Like she only has like the one effect. So yeah, everyone was nice, and there wasn't an issue. I was really worried about it. I will admit though, going in, like I was like terrified of like having to get judge calls, because like I like forget like my realm bounce at end step, right? And then like we start their turn, and then like I was like, wait a second, I gotta bounce something, and then we have to get a judge call, and then like blah 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 blah, and like no English language barrier. It was gonna be I was really terrified about that, but like no, it never really came up. Like even basically everyone spoke English. I think it was like yeah, only one or two of my opponents like didn't really speak English, and those were like short, easy games. Not like easy as in like oh easy GG easy, but more like easy as in like easy to communicate.
Gotcha. So, okay, so it's almost near an hour. I think we should wrap this up, but any last words of wisdom, encouragement, or shout-outs you want to give to our audience?
Okay, so well, I guess I'll do the shoutouts first because that's easier. Just shout out to my brother for helping me be in Japan. It was like really scary, like leaving the country and having like a familiar face to like be there and help me out was so great. Especially because since now that he lives in Seattle, we don't even get to spend that much time together. So that was like really special. Spending time with my brother Jim. He's maybe thinking about getting into the game next year. Hopefully, I can, get him up and running. Find him some realms. But obviously, also all the people on Team Gamers Command who helped us practice and prepare for the event. Specifically, Eric, Brian, Karan, all you guys who helped us like go through the decks and discuss stuff and test with us. Obviously, also Sam. Our two other main testing partners for the event were Ray and Ghoul. So you two as well. It was really great seeing you guys, especially because Ray lives in California and Ghoul is an Australian house. We don't really get to see them in person much anymore. So that was awesome. And just the people at Hobby Japan and Square Enix for running the game. It's an amazing game, and it's awesome being able to spend time with you guys. You guys make all the events run so smoothly, and just it's so much fun playing this game. What was the other question?
I don't know. Any words of wisdom for our audience, or
words of wisdom?
Encouragement, whatever you want to talk about.
go build your own decks. Have fun. Try and break the meta. Like that's what got me into this game was seeing cards I thought were underexplored and testing them out, and it's taken me so far. So just because a card doesn't see play doesn't mean it's not good. Have fun, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. You can still play the meta stuff. But yeah, I love this game, and I hope everyone else continues to play it and enjoy it as well.
Great. Alright, folks, that's all for today's video. Tune in next time for another video about FFTCG. Alright.
And probably Realm.
Alright, see you around. Bye.
See ya.